When you play the Game of Thrones,
Subscribe and like.
you die. There is no middle ground.
Welcome back to the Grease Goblins YouTube channel. Today's video, we're going to be discussing the character of Jaime Lannister in both the show and in the book series A Song of Ice and Fire. I want to preference that I'm going to be talking about mainly the first 4 seasons, as those are the seasons most linked to the book series. I know that in the show, technically Jaime's arc from the books goes to about season 6. I'm not going to really talk about it because at that point, Jaime is a very different character, and I really want to focus on that opening 4-season arc of especially Jaime getting into his redeeming qualities, especially into season 3 and season 4, and then the end of like his relationship with Tyrion throughout the first 4 seasons, as well as then in A Storm of Swords. So let's right away set the stage for both of these characters. In both the book and the show, Jaime is shown to be a character that is kind of our villain. Even in the original outline for A Game of Thrones, Jaime is supposed to be much more of the villain than he ended up being. Jaime turns out to be a very morally complex character that most fans start to root for. Now, what did inspire me to make this video is one of my friends, Becky, who does her own channel, Becky Does Blog. She has a very hot take about not loving Jaime in the books, like the whole character arc didn't work for her, all that kind of stuff. And it got me thinking about why do we really love Jaime in, say, the show, and then we also kind of love him in the books as well. Why is it that maybe Becky doesn't like him in the book versus the show? And so I really started thinking about it. I've been rereading Storm of Swords, and one thing that is for certain in the book is that yes, Jaime goes on this redemptive arc where we understand a lot more of his actions. We understand, for instance, why he pushes Bran, why he killed Aerys and became the Kingslayer, what motivated him to do those things. All the things that develop into who Jaime is as a person, we totally understand in book 3. But that doesn't take away from the fact that Jaime lied to his brother Tyrion, completely destroyed his brother in terms of how he looks at love and relationships, the way he views himself. Tyrion is completely destroyed because of Jaime being complicit with his father Tywin in this lie. Now, I much more put the blame on Tywin there, but you can't deny that Jaime sat by and let all this happen. And in the book, he very much has a close relationship with Tyrion and defends him a lot, but it's kind of this weird thing where it's yes that Jaime does like his brother, but it also comes from a place that Jaime feels like he constantly needs to defend Tyrion because, well, he lied to him. He destroyed Tyrion about love. He feels like he owes him, and that's why when we get to the end of A Storm of Swords, Jaime then releases Tyrion. It's almost like a I owe you one type thing, and you see the whole Tysha reveal play out. But the other part of it is Jaime in the book series, because we're in his head, we see everything that he's thinking about, even the insults he doesn't say to Brienne, or the horrible things he's thinking about, where maybe he doesn't care about family members, dying, or maybe he doesn't, care about the lives of certain people. Jaime's inner monologue is one of the darkest, I would say, of the series, just in terms of his demeanor. For instance, the whole conversation with Roose Bolton, and it's really dancing around the idea of the Red Wedding. Roose Bolton is betraying Robb. It's kind of the vibe you're getting. You don't really necessarily get it on your first read. You're kind of like Brienne, and you're kind of sitting here not truly understanding it, unless you're just really smart. When I read it for the first time, I didn't necessarily pick up on it, or I guess I watched the show first for the first couple seasons, so in that conversation in the show, I didn't pick up on it. But either way, the way that Jaime thinks about Brienne is being really stupid and young and naive and ugly. And so when you're reading it, you might overlook Jaime. As you can understand all of his actions, he gets his hand cut off. He's going through this very redemptive arc. He saves Brienne, but that also doesn't save from the fact that he still pushed an innocent kid to hide his incest with his sister. It doesn't hide the fact that he still lied to Tyrion about the whole Tysha stuff. That doesn't hide the fact that Jaime is just a horrible person that thinks about murdering Brienne or leaving her behind at multiple points. That doesn't hide the fact of how awful Jaime can act in both the earlier books in the first 3 and even in book 4. Even in Jaime's redemptive arc in the book, he is still willing to basically threaten Edmure's unborn child. That's not good qualities, and we know why Jaime's doing it. Jaime is using that threat as a way to get Edmure to surrender the castle, but it also shows the extremes. I 100% believe that Jaime was willing to follow through on those threats if Edmure denied it. Now, I think Jaime was smart enough to realize Edmure wouldn't deny it. Just knowing his personality and who he is, he's a very loving individual. So in the book, there's a lot more nuance with the character of Jaime. Very similar to Tyrion, Jaime is not a good guy. He's a complex individual that you can understand, and he goes on this character transformation that's absolutely perfect in the books, in my opinion. You love him or hate him, his absolute transformation of being maybe the most hated character of the first book to then going to be a character that we can understand and even some of us like is insane. Now, the show does a similar thing. He starts out being a character we do not like in the show, and by the time you get to season 3, season 4, you start to really like him. And that's the case in the show way more in the books than in the books, because in the book, you're not supposed to think of him as just a hero now. That's not what George is trying to do. And so it works brilliantly with what George writes, that people are very complex and they make some maybe bad choices, some good choices. In the show, it's much more dumbed down, albeit it's still great in the show. And so the show more or less goes with the nuance that Jaime goes from villain to hero. That's what you get from Jaime. I think most people that I've seen only watch the show or have only read the books once, but they've read the show more. Like even me, myself, I saw Jaime's transformation before I saw it in the book. And so my interpretation of Jaime was much different because I'd already seen it through the show. And so that already made me feel a certain type of way for the book character, even though the book and the show characters are very different. So in the book, we don't see anything inside of Jaime's head. We don't see Jaime constantly thinking about talking down to Brienne. Like, yes, he does talk down to her at the very beginning, but then all of that stops. Like after like the middle portion of season 3 where Jaime saves Brienne, all of that kind of goes away. Like Jaime isn't talking down to Brienne anymore. They become like fast friends. There's maybe a budding like relationship there. That's not necessarily the case in the book. It's a lot more nuanced. Like, yes, Jaime is helping Brienne. Like, he saves her, and then he also even tries to stand up for her against Loras, but he still has kind of that cocky attitude towards her. He still has some of that old Jaime in him. And that's the part of it that's so interesting about Jaime in the book, is that he isn't just solved. Now that we've gotten all these reveals and we understand his character now, it doesn't mean all of a sudden he's a great person. Whereas the show takes that in a different route. Like once he gets back to King's Landing, we get into season 4, all that kind of stuff. Outside of the incest stuff with his sister, Jaime is a very transformed individual. He's much more about honor. He's about loyalty, duty, those kind of things. He becomes really a hero for the rest of the series. Like think about going forward from season 4 forward. And he doesn't really have that morally complex layer of his character for really the rest of the show. He kind of loses that after season 3. So that isn't to say that Jaime's character arc in the show isn't really good. It's still really good. It's just a very different take by D&D in terms of dumbing it down a bit, where Jaime isn't as complex of a character in the show. In the book, he's still very complex. Where he's at right now, currently in the story, having to deal with the Lady Stoneheart plot, as he's gone with Brienne, leading probably to his capture, he's going to have to really make some difficult choices based on his survival. Will he be complicit in maybe this revenge-red wedding that Lady Stoneheart and the Brotherhood are putting on? Will that make him do some very dishonorable actions to try and keep on living? What is Jaime's fate? And in the book, Jaime has broken away from Cersei, but I don't think that's necessarily the end of their arc. I think there's going to be a little bit more to it by the end of the series. So there's a lot going on with Jaime still in the book that leads us to find him to be this character that has both good and bad in him. He's very similar to why George loves Daemon Targaryen, for instance. Jaime is very similar. Jaime has a lot of those things where you can look at some of his actions and go, wow, the thing most people say is his worst thing, killing his own king, breaking his vows, is actually one of his more heroic moments, given he saved, millions of people. So the point of this video I wanted to point out is I think that Jaime's character arc in both the book and the show is fantastic. But the show does lose a little bit of that nuance that the book has. And you really see that play out directly in a moment like the Tysha reveal. And so when you see a character like Tyrion, you see a character like Jaime, at the point of the story where we are in the show, both of those characters are heroes. because, well, Jaime doesn't have any Tysha reveal to make us think about the nuance, the complexities of the character, and then Tyrion is kind of neutered down in terms of the Shay death is a lot more self-defense. Tyrion has much more excuses as to why he kills Shay. Tywin, of course, it makes sense to kill him. Tyrion is very much a good guy. And so I look at that and I go, it makes me appreciate the book series a lot more because these characters are just more fleshed out. They're more interesting. They're more human. But let me know what you guys think. What do you think about Tyrion and Jaime, especially in the early seasons of this show? Don't really look at the later seasons. Those are completely different characters than really what we saw in the first 4. What do you think of those characters? And I will see you guys all in the next one. Bye, guys.